Welcome, Kirsten Olson, Chief Executive Officer of Children and Families First Delaware, such an important agency to our statewide community. How you doing?
I'm great, Sharon. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to connect with you.
Well, ditto. How about beginning by talking a little bit about, just quickly, how the agency has evolved?
Sure. We are a very old agency. We actually were established in 1884. So we're heading towards 140 years of service to Delaware. And as you might imagine, over 140 years, we have changed in many ways. And there are some services that we've done for more than a century, things like foster care and adoption. And then there are services that are much newer to us, like providing community-based training in trauma and resilience. And we've built a really strong continuum of services to kids and families over our long history, but continually evolving to meet community need.
This wasn't on the list, but how did you all cope during COVID?
We did okay. I mean, like everyone, we had to respond really rapidly and figure out how to keep staff connected to clients while working mostly remotely. But we were able to do that pretty seamlessly. And a lot of our services are already community-based. And so it wasn't a huge change for our staff, but interacting through telehealth, through Zoom meetings, much more than face-to-face. But we figured out how to make it work and how to continue to provide services.
My friends who are therapists say that that is a mixed blessing, telehealth. Some people do really well with it, others struggle.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think for some families, the idea of having a professional come to their home can be intimidating. I mean, I know that I'm preparing for the holidays and an influx of visitors, and there's always that anxiety about, I gotta make sure the house is clean and everything is ship shape.
Sure.
And so I think for some families that can be intimidating. And in those cases, telehealth feels a lot more comfortable. I personally am a face-to-face person. So I would rather meet with you in an office and see you and then be mitigated by a screen. But it really is very client-driven.
Tough time of the year to be in human services. The holidays are kind of a mixed blessing. I guess if you're doing okay in life, it's a real happy time. And if you're not, it's a time of self-reflection and even sorrow. What is your experience?
I think that is such an important thing to talk about, Sharon, that for everybody, the holidays aren't about celebrating with family. They may have lost loved ones. They may be having financial difficulties that make having, the perfect family moment unattainable. And so trying to be respectful of that as we interact with one another and recognize that we're all coming to this season in different ways. And as an organization, also trying to be mindful of it and making it easier for families. Just this week, we have an outpouring of support from the community who really want to make sure that the kids and families that we serve have what they need to celebrate. And so we've been operating what we call our holiday shop with donated gifts and household supplies and personal care products that our staff are able to come and gather for their families and deliver them so that they have what they need in this time.
So important. Look, who we are and where we are is an accident at birth. And I think as a community, the entire state of Delaware has done a pretty good job, or does a pretty good job of, coming together and assisting our neighbors. But we can always do more.
That's true.
Back to Children and Families First Delaware. Now, when I think of the organization, and maybe I'm like most people in Delaware who don't work with you every day, I think of foster care and adoption, but you're doing some groundbreaking work in trauma. Can you share that?
Sure. I think you're right, Sharon. Foster care and adoption is probably our longest standing continuous service. But as we talked about, we grow and evolve. And probably 7 or 8 years ago, got really interested in understanding the impact of trauma and how it affects the kids and families that we serve. And really understanding not just how it affects the kids and families that we serve, but how prevalent it is for all of us. And we've done a lot of work around a groundbreaking study that came out of the CDC called the ACEs study that looks at what they call adverse childhood experiences.
Yes.
And what that data tells us is that about 2/3 of the general population has experienced at least one traumatic event in their childhood, and that those traumatic events not only were traumatic at the time that they occurred, but have ripple effects across our lifespan and impact not only the things we may think about like behavioral health or a propensity towards addiction, but even our physical health, our heart health, all kinds of parts of our health are impacted by that trauma. And so we've tried really hard to spread that message and provide that information broadly so that all of us as a community understand those impacts.
And I think people need to be more kind to themselves, need to remember, maybe you grew up in a home where you had enough to eat and you had at least one caring parent, but that doesn't mean you didn't suffer hurt.
Yes.
And okay, so let's say I had an adverse childhood experience and I am suffering trauma. What can you do for me? What can you do? I know I'm too old for the agency, but for children.
We do so many things for children and families to help them heal from those kinds of traumas and build resilience. Everything from having therapists embedded in middle schools to providing groups around trauma and how to heal from trauma and manage through those symptoms that may come from trauma as early as early childhood, elementary school, middle school, high school. We're really trying to make services accessible to kids and families where they are. And so that may also mean a family therapist who comes to your home and works with you on the issues that you may have experienced and that you may be experiencing as a family. So there are lots of ways for us to connect to kids and families so that they're able to heal.
Sure. And, let's not forget people who are suffering from trauma can be your coworkers, clerks in the store, the person delivering your mail. So all of us really need to be aware of this and mindful, I think.
Well, and I think the data that, when we started doing our really deep work around this was started to be collected in the 90s. And it didn't look at all of the possible traumatic experience. It honed in on a certain set. And as that work has continued, we know that there's so many more ways that trauma impacts our lives, whether it's through experiences of racism, growing up in poverty, living in a community where there's violence. And then I think for all of us who've experienced the last 2.5 years, COVID has been a trauma. We've experienced a group trauma as a society. And so I think this idea of being mindful about it in every interaction is crucial.
Yeah, I was talking just this morning with my dental hygienist, and it's amazing how many people suffered something and have still been impacted.
I don't think anyone has escaped unscathed in the last 2.5 years.
Okay, my friend, how can our Delaware community help you? What do you need the community to do to support the work you do?
We are so grateful to our state of neighbors. There are lots of ways for folks to support us. Obviously, financial contributions are so important to us. Like many nonprofits, we are always trying to figure out the best way to provide the most services to kids and families. And so financial contributions are helpful, but there are also opportunities to volunteer, whether it's working with your church group to do a collection of diapers, whether it's helping us at the holidays with our holiday shop, attending an event, reaching out to us for trauma training. We're happy to come to a group and deliver this message and information because we think it's so important.
And is the website the best place for people to go to get specifics? These are very broad stroke, these interviews.
Absolutely. Our website is a rich wealth of information about all of the work that we do to support kids and families in Delaware and all of the many ways that folks can get involved.
And other than the state of Delaware, social services, is Children and Families First sort of the next largest statewide organization?
I don't want to get into an argument with anyone, but I would say yes, we are among the largest nonprofit social services organization in the state. We have about 400 staff. We serve about 20,000 kids and families a year. So we have a wide touch.
Kirsten Olson, thank you for making the time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we'll check in again, okay? Whenever you have something that you want to share.
Absolutely.
Good. All right. Merry holidays to you.
And the same to you.